Everyone, it's Anna, and today I'm going to be doing a review of The Hazel Wood by Melissa Albert. I hate Google sometimes. So if you don't know me, my name is Anna and I run this channel, Book Sawyer. I make videos twice a week now on Wednesday and Saturday. I make mostly videos about books, but I do make some videos about theater and maybe some music stuff coming up. But it is mostly a book channel. Today we're going to be doing a review of The Hazel Wood by Melissa Albert, which this review will have a spoiler and a non-spoiler section, so we'll talk about some non-spoiler thoughts till I get into the spoiler thoughts, so that if you haven't read this book, then you don't have to be spoiled. And also, just so you know, so you can take it into account, I did read this book using the audiobook format on Libby, which it's not sponsored by Libby, but they're a great app for audiobooks if you have a library card. It's great. I think I've talked about them before. I love them. The Hazel Wood by Melissa Albert is Melissa Albert's debut novel, I believe. It is the first in a so far duology. There's no confirmed third book, but I do think it's very possible that there will be a third book. But we do know that in fall of 2020, the author Melissa Albert is going to be putting out Tales of the Hinterland, which is a if you read the book, if you've read the book, or if you're going to read the book, you'll find out that Tales of the Hinterland is like a story of fairy tales within the book. So it's kind of like they're publishing the book within the book kind of thing, but there's no actual confirmed like third book, like no Mockingjay, no Allegiant. This book follows the story of Alice, a teenager, and her single mother, Ella. They have had really bad luck their entire life. They've been moving around from city to city, and they haven't really had much consistency, and in every place that they go, all these terrible things seem to happen to them. But Alice's mother, Ella, seems pretty relieved when it's announced that her mother, who is Alice's grandmother, has died on her estate called the Hazelwood. And just as their luck seems to be getting better, Ella is kidnapped by a group of people calling themselves the Hinterland, and only leaves behind one clue for her daughter: stay away from the Hazelwood. The book reminds me so much of that musical Into the Woods. It became a movie with Meryl Streep. Definitely more of like the Act 2 stuff, and like some of that stuff was cut from the movie, but it gets like pretty dark in Act 2 of the musical. And I would definitely say that the whole dark fairy tale vibe of this book definitely gives me that vibe. I think this book is a pretty great option if you like, if you want a dark book but not scary. Like I don't mind dark stuff. I think it can be very intriguing, but I definitely don't like scary things. So this book was very good for me. The book stays true to the YA label. It doesn't feel too grown up. Granted, it is dark and that may be like viewed as more mature, but it definitely doesn't feel like out of place in the YA label. And also, last thing for non-spoiler people, the one critique I can really give you of this book is that I think there was some pacing issues in like the first half of the book, but really, like especially the beginning of the book. This is a fantasy novel, but it felt like a thriller or like a contemporary. I don't even know. The stuff didn't start happening till later than I would like it, and I was like, come on, like you can move on, you know. And I was a little bit annoyed, but it wasn't enough like for it to like be it wasn't like didn't make me knock my rating of the book, but because like I still enjoyed everything that was going on. Like it's not really a critique. Like, yes, I was a little bit bored in some parts at the beginning, but I still like I enjoyed the characters and everything like enough to keep going, you know. Like it didn't bother me a ton. So that's the end of the non-spoilery thoughts for this book. So bye, non-spoiler people. I want to talk about in the spoiler section like a couple of like the main plot twist that happened in this book, which is when we find out that Alice is a story. She's Alice 3 times. I was looking at some reviews of this book, and some people said that a lot of people like saw it coming. I didn't at all. I really enjoyed that plot twist. I was really surprised. And also when we find out that Finch kind of like betrayed Alice a little bit, like I was also surprised by that. But I feel like like in the end, I still liked him at the end. I feel like he redeemed himself. And also I read right after I read this, because it was like connected in audiobook form to this audiobook, The Boy Who Never Came Home, which is like the novella about Finch, and I think I gave that like a 4-star. I enjoyed it. It was a lot more likable than Alice, but I think they're both very unlikable characters, which is kind of my next point. We have a very unlikable narrator in this story, but I still enjoyed her perspective. Like, I still thought that she was a really good narrator, I guess. I don't excuse any of the things that she did, but it didn't ruin the book for me. The things that I do want to also point out with this book is that I think it has a pretty good writing style. I know I've seen some critiques about like the writing style, but I do think that it was very immersive and it was very interesting. It's a very solid debut novel, and it's definitely a book that I would like to reread in the future. I'm glad I have a physical copy of it, because I probably will physically reread it. Thoughts for the book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I know I talked about pacing issues, but maybe I didn't do a good job of explaining it. It bothered me, like, looking back on it, but it didn't like ruin the experience for me. It didn't make me like super upset. Like, I wanted it to get to that stuff, but I still enjoyed the book, and I feel like it made it a really unique experience. I think it was G Swizzle that talked about it in her review that I'll link down below. She talked about how this book felt like reading it, like, it's a fantasy novel, but it felt like urban fantasy or like a contemporary, and it felt like something unique that she'd never read before, and I definitely agree with her on that point. I would recommend the audiobook, which is how I listen to it. I think that you can go both ways, although I can't speak for the physical reading experience. It's narrated by Rebecca Searle, who's the same person that narrated Sadie's Parts of Sadie, but I believe this audiobook came out before Sadie. So if you enjoyed that audiobook, then you might enjoy this one too. She's a very great narrator, and I think she captures Alice pretty well. The audiobook for this book is long. It's like 12 hours, so it's a long audiobook, but I think it's also would be like a long book for some people to read. It's not like giant or anything, but I mean, like, it's kind of a little chunky. This is a paperback, so, and I think this is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition of the paperback, or maybe this is just they changed it for the paperback, but the actual like cover of this book, it's like the silver and gold one, mostly silver, and I do want to get a copy of it. I don't have really any like duplicate copies on my shelf of it. There's a couple books, including this one, that I love, and I'm just like, I want every copy of it. That's all that I want to talk about. Thank you for watching my review of The Hazel Wood by Melissa Elbert, and I hope that if you haven't picked up this book, that you enjoy, that you do, because I think I would recommend it. I know it is pretty hyped up, so like I was like, I knew that people didn't like it, but I also knew that most people did, so I had like a little bit of hype, but not too much. But I have heard that the hype did ruin it for some people, so that's so that is something to keep in mind. But I do think that I do want to know what you thought if you read it, and if you have any like reviews that you want to recommend to other people, because I'm sure like I couldn't possibly talk about every critique that or every compliment that anyone could give to people, because like I don't have the same reading experience. So like, if there's anything that you guys want to talk about down below, it'd be great, or mention down below, that'd be great. So I love you all so much. I hope you all have a great day. Bye bye.